The war had already been lost before the final shots were fired. Across the black stretch of space, burning ships drifted like dying stars. The once proud fleet of the Aurelian Empire was broken, scattered by an enemy that had come faster and stronger than anyone expected. At the center of that chaos was the royal flagship, carrying Princess Caelira, daughter of the alien king and heir to the throne. From the bridge of his palace on Oral Prime, the alien king watched the battle unfold on a massive holographic display. His tall frame stood unmoving, hands clenched behind his back. Advisors spoke in low, fearful voices, but he heard none of them. His eyes were fixed on one symbol alone. The signal marking his daughter's ship. "Pull her back," he ordered at last, his voice heavy but controlled. "Order her to retreat." The command was sent. No reply came. Moments later, the princess's signal flickered. Then it vanished completely, swallowed by an explosion that lit the screen in white fire. Silence filled the chamber. Search ships were dispatched immediately. They combed the battlefield for days, scanning debris, escape pods, and wreckage. They found shattered hull plates, melted weapons, and the remains of fallen warriors. But they did not find the princess. No body, no pod, no sign of life. In time, the truth became unavoidable. The princess was declared lost in battle. The alien king did not speak during the ceremony that followed. He stood as her name was carved into the stone of the fallen, as banners were lowered and the empire entered mourning. To his people, he appeared strong, unbroken. But when the halls emptied and the lights dimmed, he remained alone, staring at the empty throne beside his own. Far away from Oral Prime, far beyond the empire's borders, Princess Caelira was still alive. She woke to pain. Her chest burned with every breath, and her limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. When she opened her eyes, she did not see the polished metal of her flagship or the familiar glow of alien technology. She saw stone, jagged rock stretched above her, cracked and dark, lit by the faint glow of a distant star. She tried to move. A sharp wave of pain forced a gasp from her throat. "You're awake. That's good." The voice was unfamiliar, rough, but calm. Caelira turned her head slowly. A tall figure knelt nearby, adjusting a portable light. He wore armor she had never seen before, scratched, simple, marked with symbols she did not recognize. His face was pale by her standards, eyes dark, hair short and uneven. A human. Her body tensed instantly. Humanity was a minor species, barely noticed by the great powers of the galaxy. Their ships were small, their weapons outdated. She had seen them only in brief reports, always listed near the bottom. "Easy," the human said, raising one hand. "You're hurt. If you move too fast, you'll make it worse." Caelira tried to speak, but her throat was dry. The human noticed and brought a small container to her lips. She hesitated only a moment before drinking. The cool liquid eased the burning. "Where am I?" she asked weakly. "Moon fragment," he replied. "What's left of it, anyway? Your ship came down hard. I found you in the wreckage." Memory rushed back alarms. Fire, the bridge shaking apart. She remembered ordering her crew to abandon ship. She remembered staying behind to cover their escape. "You're lucky," the human continued. "Another hour, and the cold would have finished the job." Luck. That was not how she would describe it. She studied him carefully. He carried a weapon, but it rested on the ground beside him, not aimed at her. His movements were careful, practiced, not fearful, not greedy. "Why did you help me?" she asked. He shrugged. "Because you were alive." That answer unsettled her more than any threat. Over the next few days, Caelira learned the truth of her situation. The moon fragment was unstable, its surface slowly breaking apart. The human, his name was Daniel, had been part of a small patrol sent to investigate the aftermath of the battle. When they detected faint life signs, his ship had been forced to withdraw under enemy pressure. Daniel had stayed behind, disobeying orders, using an escape craft to reach the wreckage. Now, it was just the two of them. Daniel treated her injuries with limited medical supplies, working patiently despite the differences in their biology. He asked few questions, and she offered fewer answers. She did not tell him who she was. To the galaxy, she was dead. To this human, she was simply a wounded stranger. As days turned into weeks, Kaelira watched him closely. He repaired equipment that should not have worked anymore. He rationed food carefully, always offering her the larger share. When hostile creatures emerged from the cracks in the rock, he placed himself between them without hesitation. Weapon raised, body steady. He never complained. At night, when the stars burned cold and bright, he sat near the small heat source, cleaning his gear or staring into space. Sometimes he spoke quietly about Earth, about oceans, storms, and cities filled with light. He spoke of loss, too, friends who had not come back, battles humanity had barely survived. Kaelira began to understand something her empire never had. Humans endured. One cycle, as Daniel worked on repairing a short-range transmitter, warning alarms blared suddenly. Red lights flashed across the small shelter. "Enemy scouts," Daniel said, already moving. "They must have picked up our signal." They must have picked up our signal. Fear tightened Kaelira's chest. If the enemy found them, neither would survive. Daniel shut down the transmitter instantly and grabbed his weapon. "We have to move! Now!" She tried to stand. Her legs shook, nearly giving out. Without a word, Daniel stepped in, lifting her with careful strength and supporting her weight against his side. "You don't have to," she began. "Yes, I do," he replied simply. They moved through narrow passages as the ground trembled beneath them. Enemy drones swept the skies above, scanning relentlessly. At one point, debris crashed down, blocking their path. Daniel worked with bare hands and tools, clearing away despite bleeding palms. Finally, they reached a hidden cave where his small escape craft waited, battered but intact. As they lifted off, the cave collapsed behind them. Kaelira looked at the human beside her, tired, injured, yet focused entirely on getting them away safely. In that moment, something shifted inside her. This human had saved her life more than once, without knowing her name, her rank, or her worth in titles. He did not see a princess. He saw a person. The stars stretched into lines as the craft jumped away from the shattered moon, heading into uncertain space. Kaelira knew that returning to her empire would change everything. For her father, for her people, for humanity. But for now, as alarms quieted and darkness embraced them, one truth was clear. The galaxy believed the alien king's daughter was lost, and she was traveling home with a human who had proven that even the smallest species could stand. The small human craft drifted through deep space, far from safe routes and known stations. Its engines hummed softly, patched together with repairs that should not have lasted as long as they did. Inside, Princess Kaelira lay strapped into a narrow seat while Daniel worked at the controls. She was still weak, but stronger than before. Color had returned to her skin, and the pain in her chest had faded to a dull ache. Daniel had done everything he could with limited tools, and somehow, it had been enough. They traveled in silence for a long time. Outside the viewport, stars passed slowly, cold and endless. Kaelira watched them, knowing that every light represented a system that believed she was dead. Somewhere among those stars was her father, still mourning her, still ruling an empire that had already begun to change without her. Daniel broke the silence. "We'll need supplies soon. I know a relay station on the edge of neutral space. Not much, but enough to refuel." She nodded. "Will it be safe?" He hesitated. "Safe enough. If we keep moving." That answer told her everything. The station was old, barely holding together, its metals scarred by time and neglect. As they docked, warning lights flickered, and automated systems struggled to respond. Daniel moved quickly, checking scanners, keeping one eye on the dark beyond the hull. Kaelira stayed close, her senses alert. She could feel the tension in him, the way his shoulders tightened at every sound. Humans were not fearless, she realized. They simply moved forward despite fear. Inside the station, Daniel gathered fuel cells and medical supplies. He handed her a small ration pack and smiled faintly. Human food. Might taste strange. She tried it carefully. It was simple, bland, but filling. It's fine, she said honestly. He laughed softly. That's the nicest thing anyone said about it. As they prepared to leave, Kalira noticed something on the scanner, a faint signal pulse, brief but deliberate. Daniel, she said quietly. That transmission. It wasn't random. He frowned, adjusting the display. You're right. Someone's watching the lanes. Enemy forces were spreading outward, searching for survivors, prisoners, or anything of value. The war was not over. It had simply moved into shadows. They left the station quickly, jumping to an unmarked route Daniel had memorized long ago. The ship shook during the jump, alarms flashing before stabilizing. Kalira felt the unease growing between them. She had kept her identity hidden for too long. Each moment brought them closer to her empire's borders, and closer to the truth. Days passed. They avoided main paths, slipping between systems where no flags flew and no fleets patrolled. Daniel taught her how to read human star maps, how to spot false signals and hidden threats. She learned quickly, surprised by how adaptable human systems were despite their simplicity. One cycle, while Daniel slept, Kalira stood alone by the viewport. She activated a small hologram, projecting the image of her father from memory, tall, proud, eyes once warm but now surely hollowed by grief. I am alive, she whispered to the empty ship. I'm coming home. The next day, enemy ships appeared without warning. 3 of them sleek, predatory, their weapons already charging. Hold on, Daniel shouted. He pushed the engines beyond safe limits, the ship groaning in protest. Kalira was thrown back into her seat as laser fire streaked past them, tearing through the darkness. They're faster, she said, gripping the restraints. Then we get smarter, Daniel replied. He flew toward an asteroid field, jagged rocks spinning unpredictably. The enemy followed, confident in their superior shields. Daniel cut power suddenly, letting momentum carry them as he fired thrusters in short bursts, weaving between stones with impossible precision. One enemy ship clipped an asteroid, spinning out of control. Another hesitated, recalculating. Daniel took the chance. He triggered a small explosive charge, scrap metal and fuel packed together, and released it behind them. The blast was weak but chaotic, scattering debris and false signals. The last enemy ship fired wildly, then broke off. Silence returned. Daniel slumped back, breathing hard. His hands shook slightly as the adrenaline faded. Kalira stared at him in disbelief. You planned that? He nodded. More or less. You saved us, she said. He shrugged again, but this time there was no humor. Just doing my job. That was when Kalira knew she could not hide anymore. Later, as the ship drifted through safer space, she asked him to sit with her. The lights were dim, the stars distant and calm. There's something you need to know, she said. Daniel turned to face her, expression serious but open. Okay. She straightened, her posture changing, years of training and command rising naturally within her. My name is Kalira of RL Prime. I am the daughter of the alien king. The words hung between them. Daniel did not speak at first. He studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. Then he exhaled slowly. That explains a lot, he said. She blinked. You're not angry? No, he replied. Just surprised. You risked your life for me without knowing who I was. He met her gaze. I risked my life because you needed help. Titles don't change that. Something tightened in her chest, not pain, but emotion she struggled to name. My people believe I'm dead, she continued. If we cross into Aurelian space, you may be seen as a threat. Or worse. Daniel leaned back, thinking. Then we'll be careful. But I'm not turning back. You don't owe me this, she said. He smiled faintly. Maybe not, but I choose it. As they approached the border of the Aurelian Empire, massive defense platforms came into view. Alien warships moved into formation. Weapons locking onto the human craft instantly. Unknown vessel. A cold voice transmitted. You are entering restricted space. Power down, and prepare to be boarded. Kalira stood. Her heart raced, but her voice was steady. They will not fire, she said. Daniel glanced at her. You sure? She nodded. I hope so. She stepped forward, activating the external channel. Her image appeared on the screens of every ship and station in range. This is Princess Kalira of Aural Prime, she said clearly. I am alive. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the galaxy held its breath. The silence after Kalira's message felt heavier than any weapon. Across the vast border of the Aurelian Empire, defense platforms froze in place. Warships that had been seconds from firing held their aim. Targeting systems locked but inactive. Officers stared at their screens, unsure if they were witnessing truth or deception. Inside the human craft, Daniel kept his hands visible and his body still. His heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He trusted Kalira. Even now, this is not possible. One of the alien commanders finally transmitted. Princess Kalira was confirmed lost. Kalira's voice did not waver. You never found my body. You never heard my final command. Because I survived. A pause followed. Then another voice joined the channel. Older, deeper, filled with restrained emotion. Bring them in. Daniel did not know who spoke those words, but Kalira did. Her breath caught slightly. It's my father, she said softly. The human craft was escorted through layers of defenses, passing massive ships and glowing stations that dwarfed it in size. Everywhere they went, eyes followed. Sensors scanned. Whispers spread through military channels and palace halls alike. By the time they reached Aural Prime, the news had already ignited the planet. Crowds gathered outside the royal palace, watching the sky. Some shouted in joy, others in disbelief. Many simply stood in silence. Afraid to hope, the landing platform was surrounded by guards in ceremonial armor. At their center stood the alien king. He looked older than Kalira remembered. His posture was still strong, his crown still gleaming. But his eyes, once sharp and commanding, were worn by grief that had never truly healed. He stared at the descending human craft as if afraid it might vanish again. The hatch opened. Daniel stepped out first, slowly, hands open. Unarmed. He felt the weight of thousands of stares. The pressure of weapons aimed just out of sight. He did not bow. He did not speak. Then Kalira emerged. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. She stood tall despite her injuries, her presence unmistakable. The same markings, the same bearing, the same quiet strength. The alien king took one step forward, then another. His breath shook. Kalira? Father, she replied. In a single motion, the king closed the distance and pulled her into an embrace, his composure finally breaking. The crowd gasped as the ruler of an empire held his daughter like a frightened parent who had just found a lost child. For a long moment, neither spoke. When the king finally stepped back, his gaze fell on Daniel. Human, he said, voice steady again but edged with emotion. You brought her back. Daniel nodded. I helped her survive. The court convened immediately. Inside the grand chamber, nobles whispered fiercely. Some stared at Kalira with awe, others with suspicion. A few looked at Daniel with open hostility. The princess could be a replica, one noble argued. A trick meant to weaken us. Kalira stepped forward. Ask me something only I would know. The alien king raised a hand. Enough. His gaze swept the chamber, silencing all voices. I know my daughter, but not all were convinced. As the proceedings continued, tension grew. Power balances shifted. Old rivals sensed opportunity. And in the shadows of the court, plans were forming. Daniel remained near Kalira, always half a step behind, eyes scanning the room. He had learned to read danger long before it announced itself. That instinct saved them. A sudden flash of movement, a concealed weapon activated. A noble lunged forward, aiming for Kalira. Daniel reacted without thought. He moved between them, pushing Kalira back as energy discharged into the air. The blast struck Daniel's armor, sending him crashing to the floor. Guards swarmed instantly, subduing the attacker. Chaos erupted across the chamber. "Daniel!" Kalira shouted, dropping to her knees beside him. He groaned, pain etched across his face. But he was alive. "I'm okay," he said through clenched teeth. Armor held. The alien king stared at the human, then at the fallen noble being dragged away. "Why?" the king demanded. The noble laughed bitterly. "An alliance with humans weakens us. Your daughter will change everything." "Yes," the king said coldly. "She will." He turned to the court. "This human shielded my daughter without hesitation. He risked his life in my throne room. That is not deception. That is loyalty." The chamber fell silent. Daniel was taken to the royal medical wing. Advanced alien technology worked alongside his simple human armor to stabilize his injuries. Kalira stayed with him the entire time. "You shouldn't have done that," she said quietly. Daniel smiled weakly. Didn't feel like a choice. When he recovered enough to stand, he was summoned back to the court. This time, the mood was different. The alien king stood from his throne. "Human Daniel," he announced, voice carrying across the chamber. "You saved my daughter when my empire could not. You protected her even here, among my own people." The king stepped down from the throne, an act no one had seen in generations. "I believe you." A ripple passed through the court. "I also acknowledge a truth we ignored," the king continued. "Humanity is not weak. It is simply unrecognized." He turned to Kalira. "My daughter, you have changed." She nodded. "I learned what strength truly is." The king looked back at Daniel. "You will remain here as our guest. No harm will come to you." Daniel inclined his head slightly. "Thank you." Outside the palace, the news spread like wildfire. The lost princess had returned. A human had brought her home. And the empire was forced to face a future it had never imagined. As night fell over Orel Prime, Kalira stood on a balcony overlooking the city lights. Daniel joined her, moving carefully but steadily. "The galaxy is watching us now," she said. Daniel looked out at the glowing world. "Then let's give it something worth watching." Above them, stars burned bright. The age of ignoring humanity was ending, and no one could stop what came next. The next morning, Orel Prime stirred, as if the planet itself had awakened from a long nightmare. News of Princess Kalira's return had spread to every corner of the empire. Citizens crowded streets, watching ships descend from the sky, cheering and whispering in disbelief. The human who had brought her home, Daniel, was a figure of curiosity and awe. Many had never imagined a species so small and unassuming could affect the fate of their empire. Inside the palace, the alien king convened the council. Nobles and generals filled the grand chamber, each face a mixture of fear, admiration, and disbelief. For generations, they had believed that the Aurelian Empire was supreme, that no outsider could ever challenge its might. Now, a human stood at the center of their history. Kalira entered the chamber beside Daniel. Her presence commanded attention. Her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had survived death and returned wiser, stronger. "Let us be clear," she began, looking across the room. "Daniel is not a threat. He is a friend, and he has saved my life. Humanity has proven its value, not with warships, but with courage, loyalty, and honor." Murmurs filled the hall. Some nobles shook their heads, unwilling to accept a human as anything other than insignificant. Others looked down, knowing the truth in her words could not be denied. The alien king rose from his throne, his tall figure casting a shadow over the council. "This empire has known loss, it has known pride, and it has often underestimated what it could not immediately conquer." His eyes fell on Daniel. "This human has shown what even the smallest among us can do. I will not forget it. Neither should you." The council fell silent. Even the most vocal critics found themselves unable to challenge the king's words. Kaelira stepped forward. I will not rule alone. I will not return to the traditions that nearly destroyed me. We must embrace new ways, and we must recognize the strength of those who fight, not for titles or glory, but for life itself. A hush followed her words. The room was thick with tension, as centuries of old thinking clashed with the truth Kaelira brought back. Then, a younger noble spoke, voice trembling. But princess, if we honor this human, will the rest of the galaxy not see weakness in us? Kaelira shook her head. No. They will see wisdom. They will see that strength is not measured only by fleets or firepower, but by the courage to protect, to endure, and to do what is right, even when the odds are against you. The alien king turned toward Daniel. You will remain in my court as a representative of your people. Your actions have opened our eyes. Your loyalty has earned you a place among us. Should you wish it. Daniel bowed slightly. I do not seek titles, Your Majesty. I ask only that my people be treated as equals, respected for their contributions. The king nodded, satisfied. Then it shall be so. Outside the palace, Kaelira and Daniel walked among the citizens. People stared, some in awe, some in disbelief. Children reached out to touch the human, seeing in him the embodiment of courage. Merchants whispered of his deeds. Even the guards, who had at first been suspicious, now looked on with quiet respect. As they moved through the city, Kaelira reflected on how much had changed. She had returned from the brink of death, but she had not returned alone. The human beside her had become more than a savior. He had become a symbol of what her empire could become if it embraced courage over pride, wisdom over arrogance. They reached the palace balcony, overlooking the city as the sun rose. Kaelira took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the light on her face. The empire is ready for change, she said. Daniel looked at her. And so are you. Kaelira smiled faintly. I am learning. And I have learned that the greatest strength comes not from power, but from the people who stand beside you even if they are not like you. The alien king appeared beside them, silent for a moment as he watched the city below. My daughter, you have returned not only to live, but to lead. And you have brought a reminder that no one is too small to shape history. Kaelira turned to her father. I wish to see the empire change, father. Not just to survive, but to thrive. To embrace what is good, what is brave, and what is just. I want humans to be more than allies. I want them to be partners. The king nodded. Then it shall be so. As word of the princess's return and Daniel's heroism spread across the galaxy, other worlds began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. Stories circulated of the human who had saved a princess, of the courage and intelligence that had allowed him to outwit death itself. Humanity's reputation, long underestimated, began to rise. Back in the palace, Kaelira and Daniel discussed the future. Plans were made for alliances, for training programs, for open communication between species. The princess was determined to prevent the mistakes of the past, to ensure that no life was undervalued or ignored. Daniel listened, contributing ideas, offering insight from a perspective the Aurelian Empire had never considered. Together, they formed a plan that would change not only the empire, but the galaxy itself. The months that followed were busy and challenging. Kaelira assumed her duties fully, but she never lost sight of the lessons learned while stranded on that shattered moon. Daniel remained at her side, guiding, protecting, and demonstrating the values that had brought him and Kaelira together in the first place. One evening, after the work of the day was done, they walked along the palace gardens. The sky was filled with stars, each one a reminder of the vastness of space and the fragility of life. You've changed the empire, Daniel said quietly. You've changed your father. You've changed me. Kaelira looked at him, eyes soft but determined. And you've changed me. You've shown me what it means to fight for something beyond duty or honor. You've shown me that courage is not measured in victories, but in the choices we make. Daniel smiled faintly. Then our work is just beginning. Kaelira nodded. Yes, but for the first time, I feel hope. True hope. Not just for me, or for the Empire, but for the galaxy. In the weeks that followed, alliances formed with human fleets and alien worlds alike. Old grudges were set aside, and the influence of the Aurelian Empire grew not through fear, but through respect. Citizens celebrated the return of the princess, but also the bravery of the human who had defied expectation and changed history. Kaelira continued to lead, guided by the lessons she had learned on the fractured moon and during the perilous journey home. Daniel, now recognized officially as her protector and advisor, remained humble, always reminding her and the court that strength came from unity, loyalty, and integrity. The galaxy watched in awe as the Empire flourished under this new vision. Former enemies reconsidered their strategies, and humans were no longer underestimated. They were a force not through sheer might, but through courage, intelligence, and the power of their choices. At last, Kaelira stood on the balcony, looking over the city as twilight fell. Beside her, Daniel stood quietly, ever vigilant, but at peace. The alien king joined them, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "You've done what I could not," he said softly. "You've brought honor to the Empire, and shown the galaxy the truth." Kaelira smiled. "No, Father. Humanity has done this. And together, we will shape a future where no life is underestimated, and courage is valued above all." The stars above seemed to shine brighter that night, reflecting the promise of a galaxy forever changed. The princess had returned. The human had proven the worth of his kind, and the Empire, once steeped in pride and fear, now looked forward to a future built on respect, bravery, and unity. For Kaelira, Daniel, and the people of the Aurelian Empire, the story of survival, loyalty, and courage would echo across the stars, inspiring generations to come. The Empire had been saved, not by war, but by the hearts of those brave enough to act when all seemed lost. And somewhere, beyond the horizon of stars, humanity's place in the galaxy had finally been recognized. If you want, I can now create a full version of this story, combining all 4 parts into a continuous, polished narrative of around 5,800 words, ready for your YouTube HFY script or Reddit post, keeping it engaging, simple, third-person, and violation-free. Do you want me to do that next?